it looks great to us. So like, I don't know what to change.
And again, we showed it to you beforehand.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's like when I send a client like a almost done thing and they're like, it's a good start. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, literally.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jesse Nyberg podcast. Today we have on Arabella and Ellie from Per Our Last Email and Weekend Creative. So I went on their podcast probably like a month ago now and they're back finally. We had some scheduling issues, but I think it worked out well
More
enough.
like our kind of issues.
More like we're never free.
Yeah, it's so hard, like especially with all the different types of people. Like I'm sure you obviously know, everyone has different like preferences on when they want to do things, like when they're available. Some people they act like they're the busiest people you've ever met and they can't do anything ever.
Are you talking about us right now?
No, not at all. I've just had like, and then I have other people where they're like, yeah, any day. And I'm just like, all right, well, I got to figure it out on my end, also.
Yeah. I know it's actually been kind of, everyone has such different schedules, because of like what they do and like when they're conducive to work and all that stuff. So it's just been interesting. Like we try to stay on a schedule, for our own recordings, but it's tough, man. Like it's tough.
Yeah, for sure.
What were you guys doing? You said that you were like out of town or whatever.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we went. So there's a company called Domestica. We did a course with them in February in New York, and then they're headquartered in Spain. So that's where we were supposed to go originally for our first course. And so they asked us to do a second one, and we were like, yes, if you take us to Spain. So we got to go to Madrid and film, which was so fun, but it definitely like, for our last course, it kept getting pushed out because of COVID. And so we had like a year to work on it, which was probably not good for us because we just procrastinated on things.
Oh, 100%.
But this time we had a much shorter, well, it was 3 months, but it felt very short to write this entire course and like get it ready to film. Yeah. So October just ended up, I think we underestimated how much work we were going to be having to do. And then we also took on a bunch of client work. So we were just like crazy trying to get everything done before. So it was great. And it's going to be a great course and like really happy with it. But it was very hectic trying to get it all done.
Very hectic, very draining, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think people underestimate how draining being on camera and like talking is. And I think unless you have your own podcast, then you know. But
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes when I do a podcast, even if I'm, however long we're on this call, like an hour, a little bit more, or whatever, you don't account for like there's the pre like call, like whatever you're doing, then there's like the post stuff and like making sure everything's fine. And I feel like after I do a podcast, I can't do other things that day. Like I have to make sure I don't have like super important, maybe like client work or anything that same day.
Yes. It's hard to focus after because you're kind of in that mindset and it's tiring,
Right.
Yeah.
So
add alcohol to the mix and I mean, you're done for.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys do it. It seems
I know. I don't know how we're going to do next week because we usually do 2 recordings in one day, but we're going to do 3. And like we used to do 4 in the very beginning.
You're going to like black out on the
I'm going to just have a couple of sips and that's it. I can't.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, I had it later in my notes, but you brought it up. How was it doing the Domestica course? Because I know I've seen them do a lot of cool stuff and it looked like really dope, the set you guys had and everything.
They did all of that. They built the set. They're so great. And they're just a really great company. Like you can tell, like when you go to into a business and like all the employees are really happy and that.
Or they just treat you with so much respect. Like you're meant to be there. Like
they treat you like you're the star, but it's like all the employees, you can tell they're enjoying their job. And I feel like that's a sign of a really good company that cares about people. So and they really care about education and they want their courses to be really high quality, even though they're a really affordable price, which is why it's so much work that goes into it. But I think it's good because they really push you to make it the best that you can make it, and they don't let you slack off at all.
No. Yeah.
They're like very like,
and the only reason we even slacked off like probably for the first course was because of just having to push it because of COVID.
And kind of the deadline was like unknown. So we were like, oh, we have so much time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a great company. If you have a chance to work with them, I would recommend anyone working with them. I think if you are excited about education and prepared, because it's going to be a lot of work.
It is.
But if you love that, then it's a great partnership.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah, I realized too, like you're saying how it kept getting pushed back. Like obviously there's some things that are so short that they seem impossible to finish, but I realized like you take as long as you have, you know, like if you have 3 months to do something or 1 week, you're probably going to take the 3 months, even though you could finish it in like a couple weeks or whatever.
It's so true.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a weird like psychology thing. And I think with Domestika, did they just like reach out to you? I see a lot of I've seen designers and stuff work with them as well.
We thought they were a scam first. We were like,
we didn't know we didn't never heard of them.
No, never.
Yeah.
This was
it an email? It was an email,
right? It was
right?
like January 2020 or February 2020. Yeah, they sent an email and they're like, we're in Spain and we're a company. We want to do a course with you. And then we get on a call with them and they're like, yeah, so we'll fly you to Spain. And we got off the call and we were like, that's not real. Like that for sure is
absolutely
fake.
Not. Yeah, we were like,
you're going to never come back or something. Like that's like one of those things.
Yeah. But they're very much real. Because they're based in Spain, most of their courses have been more in the Spanish-speaking countries because they did mostly Spanish-speaking courses up until the last probably year.
Yes,
year and a half.
with subtitles. With subtitles.
So
like
you can definitely take them, and I think they're starting to dub courses now too.
And I think that's why they're like, you know, why they've been like gaining so much popularity is because they've chosen to, have the courses be available in different languages via the
and they're just focusing more on English speaking courses now. So,
if we would have stayed with the schedule of we would have been the first English speaking course, which would have been cool.
Really?
That would have been really cool because it got pushed out. We lost that title, that claim to fame.
Sad.
But
yeah, that's like big now to be accessible like that. Like that's why like obviously like Squid Game, everyone is talking about that and whatnot, but that's why
love that show.
They were not only #1 in Korea and in the US, but all these they dubbed like whatever, like 40 countries like right on the same day.
Yeah,
which is pretty
that's incredible.
insane.
I did not know
so
that.
Cool.
I mean, I know the popularity, but like I didn't know that it was that accessible.
Yeah, there's all those memes about it because like the dubs are like really bad and it doesn't match up at all.
I mean, that'd be really hard.
Yeah, a lot of people. I feel like I kept seeing a lot of different reels or videos being like, some of the translations didn't quite make it, what it should have been, but still, like it was interesting.
Yeah.
For sure. I wanted to ask, before we get too much into a few other things, I know you have Weekend Creative and your photography pursuits and things, but what made you want to, I guess, expand or like pivot slightly into creating the podcast?
I mean, I think everything we've done up to this point has kind of stemmed from Weekend Creative, right? So Weekend Creative was our first thing where like we wanted to do our own work. We wanted to create our own work outside of what our boss wanted or wherever we worked at before. And then from there snowballing into like, okay, well, what are things that like we're not seeing out there in the world that we either wish we had or what do we want to see for ourselves, like and so I think the podcast came from really just seeing how many different kinds of freelance podcasts that were out there that were very educational, like education focused, where it was like, here's how you do this XYZ, like and not being as like, I don't know, casual and like kind of sharing more of the like behind the scenes of like, here are the not so talked about things and
more
the
raw.
Not so pretty things.
Yeah.
The things where we make mistakes or where unbelievable situations kind of happen or whatever,
Yeah. And just like realizing how, because we had each other.
Yeah.
But so many freelancers are by themselves and they don't have anyone to validate them or tell them that the things that they're going through are normal. Or just commiserate and share stories where you're like, oh, this happened to me too, or this is how I dealt with that. And we just felt like that was really lacking in the freelance community. So it's kind of our way of how we can provide that for other freelancers, and help them not feel alone in some of those situations that are hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I didn't necessarily start the podcast with that same like methodology, like purely to educate on like freelance and like business and that sort of thing. But I always see people like commenting, like especially when it's like a designer that someone really likes, like, oh my God, like I can't believe they deal with that too. Like they're so good. I thought that and it's like kind of cool because you're like, everyone deals with it, but then it's sad because you're like, oh, that bad stuff never goes away no matter how good you get, you know?
No matter how long you've been doing this, you might still face some things.
Or even once you start to get to know people who you look up to, like we've gotten to know a lot of photographers who we really look up to and have for years, and they've been like our like inspiration. And then you get to know them on a personal level and you're like, oh wow, everyone's just figuring it out. Like they don't really know what they're doing either. And now they're asking us questions and being like, what would you charge for this? And we're like, oh my gosh, like I thought you would know. You know? So it like you said, it's comforting, but it's also kind of like, all right, I guess we're just all in this together and nobody knows what they're doing.
Let's all hold hands.
That's such a weird feeling. Like I've talked to so many people that are like inspirations of mine and people I looked up to. And it's crazy once you start communicating and like realizing how much more you have in common, how quickly the relationship like vibe or whatever changes from like you being like, oh my God, like, thank you for talking to me to like, yo, like, what's up? Like, what are you guys doing? Like this time. And it's so like everyone's so much more, I guess like peers or whatever than you would expect.
Exactly. Yeah. Colleagues.
Yeah,
colleagues. I never want to say that because it feels like that you work at like a cubicle or something. But I guess that's the right word for that type of thing.
I don't know what else to say.
You said that you like, oh, you have each other when it comes to like a lot of this stuff, and other people didn't have that. What was kind of the inspiration behind you like starting up Weekend Creative and like deciding to join forces like that?
Yeah.
We worked together at a local magazine. And we worked together in college.
Yeah.
We were partners in a photography class. So we would alternate one of us. You would basically assist each other on your projects.
Yeah.
And you studied photography, both of you?
Well, I studied graphic design.
Yeah. Okay. I was doing advertising.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd always done photography growing up. But I did a photography minor in college.
Okay, cool.
I wanted to do a photography minor, and then I ended up with an art history minor somehow instead. But I took a lot of photography classes as electives in my major.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were in a studio class together, and so we kind of already had worked together for a long time. And at the magazine, I feel like that's where we really developed our different roles, because the first shoot that we did together, we both shot it at the same time.
Yeah.
And then and did you shoot on film?
I shot on film and you shot on digigal.
And then we tried to like match, like make them
because I had these like
the same.
I had these presets that were pretty cool that were like the film that I was using for that shoot, I had it as a preset. I think it's Maston Labs is the name of those presets that like if you happen to shoot a wedding or something where you were shooting both film and hybrid, then you can match all of your like images. If you do that. Yeah.
Like
if you're a hybrid shooter
or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, and so like, we both shot it together and I was like editing it and putting it all together. But it was just like interesting. I think we have a photo where we're like both like huddled on top of each other.
Like both shooting like squished together. And that was the last time we ever did that.
That last time.
Because it kind of it didn't make sense. Like, why are we both doing the same roles? Like, we can get so much more done if we're doing different things. And so we kind of developed that. And then...
But that was such a fun shoot. I think that was just like...
It was really fun. And the images are fun.
Yeah.
But it was more fashion work is what we were doing. It's more fashion and like social media type stuff. And so we just started shooting outside of that for fun. And then we emailed a company, It's Ice Cream, and asked them if they would give us product in exchange for photos. And they offered to pay us. And we were like, wait, people get paid for this?
Yeah.
So that kind of was our first client. And then from there, we still didn't really intend to actually have it be our full-time job or actually have a business, but we were just taking on shoots on the side. And eventually it kind of got to the point where I was working full time and I was like, I am taking vacation days to work on this. Like I should just go part-time and things just kind of grew from there. So
yeah. I think at some point, I mean, everything that has happened with Weekend Creative has been very like loosey-goosey, kind of like, all right, let's kind of see how things go. And everything's been very natural and organic, which I mean, like I really appreciate. I think it's helped us to like kind of settle where we need to be as far as our roles and like what we do in our business. And it's all been very goals, passion driven. Yeah. Yes.
We always had like some sort of direction, but we just didn't really know what the like end game was for a while.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. Sometimes too, if you go like, it's good to have goals and like a strategy, but if you try to do it like too far, you'll just like not even try because it's so overwhelming and just kind of like you could never know. Like when people say like, where do you want to be in like 5 years or whatever?
I can't ever answer that question very well.
5 years ago, I wouldn't even expect anything I'm doing right now to be even possible. So, and like, what was I going to ask you about? You obviously, it must have not been that like loosey goosey or whatever, because you have a pretty dope business and you guys shoot cool stuff. And recently I was doing a little bit of research. Like I didn't know you had such a pop in Patreon as well. So you got something figured out.
Thanks. We love our Patreon. Well, so our Patreon was born because we started
it was an epiphany.
It was an epiphany where we were blogging twice a week for years.
On our just regular,
for free. There's a lot of free content on our site if anyone wants to go read it. But someone at some point was like, you guys could get paid for that. And we were like,
what?
You're right. We should get paid for that.
Well, we just started to get so many like questions in our inbox and like, wanting to clarify like certain things that we were posting on our social or like, all these questions. And like, at some point
we're happy to answer
things. But when it becomes so much that like it's the same like thing over and over again, we're like, oh wow, okay, so I think there is a need for people who want to have this information available. And so from there, naturally it just
and there's a Slack channel that comes along with it. So it's not just information, but we want to foster community. So people can ask each other questions and they can answer each other and they can share, images they're working on or things like that. Like they want feedback from people. And then the highest tier, we do a monthly video call, and it's really cool because we have the same people who show up almost every month. And so we've really gotten to know them. Yeah. And it's really cool because now I see them interacting with each other on Instagram and like they're friends, and that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that. So I think that's like the best part of it. Like our blog posts, are great. We put a lot of time into them, but I think the community side is the most valuable.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of that because I have a Discord and I have Patreon and stuff as well. And I've been looking to get a little bit more into something that I can do that I guess drives like the connection without being like too accessible, but also like I want to be able to hop on calls with people and stuff, but still like respect my own like that parasocial relationship or whatever you want to call it. But the ones I've seen that do the best, whether it be like YouTube channels, Patreon, is all about the community. Like the content, obviously you need that to get someone there, but then they stay, I think, for like that sense of they feel like they belong
community.
to community or like a niche. And that's cool. The blog stuff, like, it seems like that is kind of on the way out, but you were probably doing it when it was super popular and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we started our blog the same time we started our business, basically.
Yeah. It was kind of more of like us just sharing our journey at first and just like having something to like document like what we were doing. Back then we also had like our inspiration posts, like we, would share what was inspiring us at the time. We'd each have one like every week.
I think we had an inspiration post every week and then some other kind of
and then like resource and then like, educate. Yeah. Just a little bit of everything.
And it was just us learning too. Yeah. So some of those posts probably could be like updated.
Probably.
But we were just like, hey, as we're learning stuff, let's share it because we're not finding this information. We're having to learn it on our own. So that means somebody else is probably searching for it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And do you, what was like I guess when you first started, how did you start to figure out, like, I'm sure you had similar aesthetics in like photography and like maybe a taste and like style, but how'd you start to figure out, because you said like you can't be on top of each other shooting like that. So how'd you figure out, I guess, the roles and like who's better at what and things like that?
We didn't really. So what's super weird about our business, which I don't really recommend, but like we didn't really have a conversation about it. And we also never had a conversation about let's do product photography
at all.
We kind of just started doing it.
Oh, really?
Which is really weird. And I don't think that's normal. I don't think that's how most people like start their business. But we just kind of fell into it and we were just doing it more and more. And it's kind of what made sense for us. And I guess, yeah, we never had a conversation to say like, you're the photographer and I'm going to do production. But it was kind of what we were doing at the magazine that we were at. Yeah. And so that kind of made sense. And I think we both knew what our strengths were. And so we just
I wasn't great at organization or at like, you know, really like having well thought out ideas, you know? And so, and Elliot was that.
And I'm not good at Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so it was just like, Photoshop. It made sense, like where we were at, you know, it's like, okay, here's the art director, right? And clearly we had like very similar likes and kind of taste and style. We were both very interested in similar things. So it just became easy for her to be the art director. And like, you know, obviously like I provide support and she does too, you know, like with, you know, when we're shooting, because we shoot together. Yeah. And we work together, we tag team on that. So it just like kind of made sense based on like what we're good at. And, you know, she studied graphic design. So it's like, you know, all those like concepts and like things like that, like really like added to that, to your role.
Yeah.
I'm sure the design too helps with like prop design and like stuff like that and 100%. Like composition wise and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you said that you kind of didn't really stumble, or you kind of stumbled upon like the product stuff and like you didn't have a plan, it reminded me of the guy, I think it was the dude that wrote either Game of Thrones books or like the Lord of the Rings stuff. He says there's architects and gardeners. Like the architects, they plan everything out, they outline, like they know the end before they even start. And then the gardeners, like they write the story and it grows, and sometimes it turns out good and then sometimes it dies or whatever. But that's like the two different ways to like, and I always like remembered that because that works with like so many things, like not just writing a book, obviously, like people do their businesses like that, their social media like that, like all these different pursuits. Some people are so like, they got to know because they're scared of like the unknown, and other people are like on the opposite side where they're almost like, fuck it, like if it doesn't work, at least we tried, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you do get to a point in your business where you do have to start kind of making those distinctions. If you, because once you start juggling so many things, it's like, okay, you have to have a plan. Yeah. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. But I think in the beginning, it's okay to be more of like fluid and kind of test different things and out. See. You know, and I would recommend if you have a partner, sitting down, having clearly defined roles, and having an agreement between yourselves about everything.
That we did do.
We did have a partnership agreement like later on. Where it's like, if the business dissolves, what happens to everything? Because there's a lot of stuff that we own together. We both own half of it. So then what happens? You know?
Like equipment and all that stuff.
Equipment, our name,
our work,
all our trademarks.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, our assets, like our design assets, and
even the stuff that we bought for our studio, like, you know, all the things.
Then that kind of makes me think then, like, what do you think are some of the, because you guys obviously seem like you're close friends either before and during, outside of like photography in your business. So what are some of the advantages and I guess like not disadvantages, but maybe like not so good things about working with someone that's also your friend?
Well, not everyone wants to work with a partner. There's a lot of people where they try that and it doesn't work. So it's, you know, there's definitely pros and cons, and some people it's not the right thing for them, or it's not the right person. I think an advantage is we can do a lot more. There's two of us. So we're able to do a lot more than we could. I think
the support.
The support.
Yeah.
And being friends, like we get to do things like when we were in Madrid, we stayed a few extra days
we get to
and just
experience
had
things
fun
together.
Yeah, you have someone who's sharing that experience and someone who, like, Arabella is really the only person who can like understand what it's like to own Weekend Creative.
Yeah.
Nobody else can really understand that.
Right.
Like, I can talk to my mom, or I can talk to my boyfriend, or I can talk to another friend about it, but it's like they don't really get it.
No.
You know? Or like if we're dealing with a specific client, yeah, it's like that specific client situation, like only Arabella understands it. So it's really nice to have that. But then you do, like, we split income, right?
Yeah.
So you have to make more money because you have two sets of bills that you're trying to pay and two people you have to support. That's like one of the disadvantages. But I'm trying to think of others, and I feel like for us, there's not really that many.
No.
But I know some people, like, you have to compromise a lot.
Yes.
And I think some people don't want to have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think for us, it's kind of easy for us to compromise because if we ever even feel like we're compromising, I don't ever feel like really I'm compromising because I know that I can defer to Ellie for, you know, what she's good at and like vice versa, you know?
So it's helpful to have different roles too, because then you have someone who's kind of like in charge of that specific thing.
Exactly.
And they can make the decision at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You can't really have two people who are like both like, in charge of something sometimes.
Yeah. And I'm like very okay. Like, you know, there's things that like, I'm just glad Ellie's doing and like that she, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like, to me, it doesn't ever really feel like compromise. It just means that we're working together as a team. And maybe that's just...
you have to trust too, which also doesn't feel like a disadvantage. But I think for some people, like I'm thinking of...
communication, you have
to communicate really well. And you have to trust that other person, you know, and know that like they have access to all of the money and they have, you know, or that maybe they're not doing everything that they're saying they're doing. And so you want to have a partner that you like really trust. And I think that's really important. And you're not going to have a good partnership if you can't have that.
Yeah.
It's like a marriage, you know?
It is like a marriage.
I found like working with friends in the past, not so much as like a solidified partnership like this, but maybe on a project or some kind of venture or even just something that's like self-initiated, like an art project. You notice, like, at least for me, I don't know if this is obviously hasn't like plagued you guys too much, but I start not wanting to like interact with them as much as just a friend because I'm always around them like on this project. So we didn't hang out as much like out on the weekends or whatever, you know?
Well, we have separate friend groups too. Like we have a lot of mutual friends, especially because of Weekend Creative.
Yes.
And that's really great. But we also have separate friends. And sometimes, actually, a lot of times people ask me if we live together.
I know, actually, yeah.
A lot. And I'm like,
well, someone even actually, a little Drill even asked us if we were like together, like dating.
Like, what? No, and like, not that I don't like. I think you'd be a great roommate if we didn't work together.
Yes,
but
I don't think I could live with.
Because we work together, it would be like that's all we would talk.
I don't think I could live with you.
No, it's all we would talk about.
Yeah,
and we have very
24/7.
different lifestyles. Like,
yes,
we have. It's just so different, and I think it's good for us to have that space, and we like go home.
Yes,
and we're separate.
Right. Well, and then like the things I think that we can experience as like together as running a business, like for example, like Spain, right? Like that's something that like that's our time to like hang out and like kind of experience those things together. Like even those extra few days after working. But I mean, we spend so much of our time together. That like
that you have to have.
We have to.
And we will hang out sometimes, or we'll do things, or like, or you know, hang out with our mutual friends. But a lot of times we're like. We have our separate space on the weekend and stuff. So
I'm always curious how people do that because I asked the same thing to Amy and Jen. From,
well, they're sisters, so that's like even another level.
So it's even more. And I was like, how do you? And they were like, sometimes you know, like they could tell it's about something else. Like they'll be arguing about like a client, and she'll be like, "And you didn't let me like get the top bunk or whatever." Like when we were 6 years old. It goes all the way back to like the beginning of time.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they're such gems. I love them.
Yeah.
They were cool to have on, and I thought you guys have a similar like the curtain like type show.
Yes,
you had a similar setup.
We copied them.
We 100%.
To be transparent.
When we had them on our podcast, we were like, they noticed our thing.
And we're like, we copied you.
We saw
they
yours.
have their green. It's so pretty.
It's
and
so pretty.
We have a green screen behind this. And so we were trying to think of a way to cover it that would also absorb sound, that would also like look nice for video stuff. And so we saw them have their curtain and we were like,
do you use the green
curtains.
screen for like video stuff that you do?
For Adobe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we live stream with Adobe.
It's all online now, right? So
yeah,
like
it's all remote.
I know.
So
because you guys were you were one of the people I met, like or what am I trying to say? Like I didn't know anyone that did the like COVID Adobes besides I've seen you do it. I only know designers and stuff that did it on like the Behance like live stream or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What was it like doing that like actually in person? It looked pretty crazy,
so
the setup they have.
I mean, I didn't not like waking up that early because
we have to drive an hour to get there.
Yeah,
it's
an hour and a half even sometimes.
It's in the city, right?
It's in the city.
Well, yeah, it depends on traffic. We have to leave extra early to miss traffic.
Yes,
but they would like we would always go together, even if just one of us was streaming. And they were always like,
really?
"You don't both have to come." We're like, "No, I know, but it's fun.
It's so much fun. Plus, we don't have to worry about like one's driving, one's."
Like working
or like mentally preparing for the stream.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was fun. And it was fun to meet the guests in person because you would just make such a better connection and it was easier. And we got to have lunch and hang out with the team, and the team is super great.
Yeah.
But I don't miss the driving there.
I don't miss the driving.
It's nice to just come here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I do miss the connection.
The online's a lot harder to connect because I've seen like not yours, but I've seen some where I'm like, these people are not like a good partners or whatever to like compare.
It's hard, and it's in person it's a lot easier to have that chemistry or just to like I don't know. Yeah. It's hard to do that remotely with someone you've never met.
Yeah. So. But I do think it opened up a lot of doors for like the kinds of guests that
and international guests that they could have, because before they only could have guests from America and Canada and maybe Mexico. But
just like that's who they'd fly out or whatever.
Yeah, they didn't have the budget to fly someone from Europe or Asia or something.
They should have the budget for how much that shit costs.
I mean, come on. They should have the budget, but like I think their little team was always fighting to get more budget.
Yes.
So
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
that's cool. I always feel the same way about my podcast. Like eventually, if the budget warrants it, I want to have like a studio, whether that's in just the house or in a place. But I think about it and it's like, I don't know, still like at least like 75% would probably still be like this, because I'm not going to be flying people out from like Germany and shit, you know?
I mean, how cool, but that would be so expensive.
I know.
Yeah.
Because you've only done a few like that, right? Locally? Like
we've only
San
done
Jose.
one. And it was hard with the sound. So if we were to do it again, we would have to figure out.
Yeah, we'd probably have to get
a third mic.
A third or fourth mic. Yeah, if we wanted to get more guests in here, I think we'd have to like expand our equipment.
For sure.
Right now it's just like these two mics. And so the setup was a little interesting, but it was a lot of fun having,
it was really
having
fun.
a third person.
Yeah.
Also, our room is just so tiny. We were like dying, drenching in
so
sweat.
Hot. Because it's hot with just two of us in here. This is a closet, basically.
Literally.
Is what it's supposed to be.
I know. When I'm done recording, I just like, I prioritize like sound over my own comfort. So I don't do like any fans or I put on these like hot ass lights just because I like how it looks, even though they like generate heat.
So much
heat. After you like, it's like we talked about earlier, you feel like you're just done like for the rest of the day after that. Yeah. What was I going to say? I'm sometimes jealous that you do most of them like when you don't have guests with each other, because that seems so much more convenient for like what the sound's gonna be like every time versus like guest audio. You never know once you get there.
Yes, I feel like it's gotten better too, but for a while every single time we had a guest we had a different technical issue
every time,
and it was always different. So we couldn't fix it or prepare for it, and so it was always like,
I know at some point I just admitted, I just had to accept that like not everything, if we're gonna have like so many different kinds of guests and different people and not everyone's tech savvy,
and you can't expect people to go buy equipment.
No, absolutely not. I would never.
When they show up with like even like the Yeti or some shit, I'm like, thank God, like they have something at least. Because like AirPods and stuff like that, like something about AirPods, like I tell them like
so annoying.
Even get like $5 Target headphones probably sound better than AirPods for some reason.
100%. Yes.
Yeah, it is nice that it's just us, and it's also easier to have like time. We don't have to. We do schedule it, but we know each other's schedules.
Yeah.
So like Arabella knows my schedule; she can know when to plan that recording.
Yeah.
And there's less coordination.
Yes, exactly.
So.
Yeah,
that's
it is pretty
easier.
helpful.
Yeah.
Have you? How do you like go about, I guess, sourcing your guests? I'm always curious how other people do that kind of stuff.
We steal from everyone we've had on Adobe Live.
Literally.
Oh yeah.
Everyone who ever, had the pleasure of hosting.
Yeah. No, in the beginning, it was like every single guest was from Adobe Live pretty much.
But because again, it's like we knew the connection.
We knew them.
We knew that they would like be able to have a conversation and like, because that's sometimes hard to tell from just like going on someone's profile or portfolio or website or whatever. And like thinking that, maybe they're like really down to earth and outgoing and whatever. And then come to find out they're kind of quiet or like, can't really keep up a conversation. So like a lot of the ones that we had in the beginning were because of knowing that they could talk and,
That's a good like way to ease into it too.
Yeah.
Like I started that too. Like the first, 5, I were like, not just like I knew, but like probably like friends more than anyone else I've had on.
Too.
And that helps. I think I spoke about this when I went on your podcast. Like, like the talent or like notoriety as a creative isn't parallel with like speaking skills and like how good people are at telling stories or whatever it may be. And like, it's not like no shade, but like, how are you supposed to know? And it feels disrespectful to be like, so like do like a thing. Like, I want to see how you sound or something like that.
I know it does. Yeah. It's hard. And I think they even find that on Adobe Live. Like sometimes you get people who you're hosting, and I think you've kind of said you've maybe seen some of these, but you get people you're hosting who are like professional speakers. Like they know they can teach.
Right.
They're great at explaining things. Yep. And then you get people who they just have maybe never done that before, and that's okay. But it's sometimes really hard to have a conversation because they're nervous and they're so focused on what they're doing that they're forgetting to explain things. But they also, it's tough. And so, same thing in the podcast. But I would say overall, we really have gotten very lucky with our guests. Like, I don't think there's really anyone that I'd be like, oh, that was a terrible episode.
I mean, I think part of it is also that it's not like anything video related. So we're just talking. We tell people maybe. Like, if you want to just be in your pajamas, like, I don't care.
Yeah. We just try to make it as casual as possible. Yeah. But
like
it's
conversation.
Easier to cut too when there's no visuals, because it can look like it doesn't need to look smooth or whatever. You could cut out a whole like 1 minute pause and no one would even notice that.
Exactly.
It's so
exactly.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of like us being both like hosts, is that like we can kind of jump back and forth and like, ask things or like sort of bring the conversation around if it feels like it's getting.
Because you've mostly done for Adobe, you've mostly been on the like host side of it, right? Because there's like usually the host and then someone, like that's another element. Someone's doing like a task. It's a lot harder to come up with like
it's
cool conversations when you're
and
like
work.
It's I do it when I do my own videos and like I can edit them, but if I left them raw, it's like me for like 2 minutes with like my mouth open, like staring at something on the screen, because I forget that I'm supposed to be telling people what I'm doing.
It's really hard to multitask.
Oh my gosh.
I know that we've been guests on Adobe Live twice, but both times I just was basically like the host and Arabella had to work. And
oh my gosh. And it was
I've never had to do that.
It was, the first one was so difficult. I remember I was so grateful whenever Ellie would talk, because it gave me a moment to breathe.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was going, like I do this thing when I'm like, whenever I'm on live, like and I've gotten better at this now, but I just don't breathe. Like I literally like talk, and I stop breathing. And then I'm gasping for air. And finally she takes it over and I'm just like, okay.
Breathing.
Breathing.
Yeah. That's
Seems
another
like such a
good
normal
time it is to have both of you.
Yeah.
Like, you can,
that
the live, like, did you do what were you doing, like photo editing? Was that your guys like class
photo
or whatever?
editing and creating stop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. I hope they eventually get it back to like in person and all that. I don't know if they have plans for that.
I don't know how likely that is though.
They seem like they're
They seem like they're enjoying the.
But I think they might do part-time, a hybrid maybe. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe for like local people or something.
Yeah, I know, because I do really miss going there. I miss it. It was great.
Yeah, it was a nice little break to like kind of like our day or like what we were doing.
That's like the biggest pro and con to like the whole like COVID thing with like communication is it allowed for a lot of good things like, oh, people don't have to work at their office every day or people can communicate with people they never would. But then it also makes people like big companies kind of think like, well, this is cheaper. Like, let's not even do the whole, like
why even pay for our space anymore?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like, what's that? What's the building in SF that's like the biggest building?
Well,
Salesforce.
we live here, but
it's like Salesforce. They have that like crazy building, and they like moved half their employees or like whatever to like some other place, and they don't even use it. It's like,
oh my gosh,
100 stories or whatever it is.
I mean, even Adobe alone, like they're like not going in there. I mean, I don't know about now, but
I'm sure other teams are. But
was the campus or not? I guess office, whatever it was. Like, was it pretty? Like big and crazy there?
Yeah, it's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big. It's not actually their headquarters. Their headquarters is in San Jose.
Yeah, which is where we live.
We live. But
all the creative stuff is kind of like over
in
there.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
like Creative Cloud or whatever is like that place.
Well, like they're more creative teams.
Yeah, like the more creative teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I think over here it was more of like, well, headquarters, but also like, you know, like financial stuff or like, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever else they do.
Whatever else
what
that
do they do?
I don't know. To, you know, run.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, was that kind of, I guess, like, were you doing a lot of teaching and things like that before you got into like third party, I guess like classes? Like I know you did the blog and stuff, but what kind of got you to inspired to like lean so heavily into like education around like photography and freelancing?
Yeah. I mean, our blog was first.
Yeah.
And I think like we mentioned, we started that because we just weren't finding information online. So so we were just like, okay, like let's create this. And then
that naturally led into us then starting consultation calls or like coaching calls. Because we were like finding that people wanted to talk to us and just kind of pick our brain.
People were asking us about calls, and we were like, eventually, we did, I think, of some free ones. And then another friend was like, our friends are always like, why are you doing that for free? And so another friend was like, you know, you should charge for those. Yeah. And so we did. And then we had a friend who worked for Adobe, Jasmine.
Yeah.
Actually, her boyfriend now edits our podcast.
Yeah.
Cool. He's great. But she was working for Adobe, and so she was the one who connected us with their live team. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just, I don't know. It wasn't something that we were really planning on doing. I think like most things were just like, okay, let's
run with it.
Things would come our way, and we would just say yes, and then see if we liked it.
Yeah, and then we did. So we liked it so much that we were like, this feels like right.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't turn many things down in the beginning.
Yeah.
We do now.
But for sure.
In the beginning, it was like we kind of just said yes to everything that came our way for the most part,
and
for better or for worse.
From there, too, then it became like, okay, well, people like what we're doing.
Yeah.
So why don't you teach a workshop or why don't you talk on this thing? And so speaking engagement started becoming a thing. This was like right before COVID.
Yeah.
Things
and our online courses and stuff.
Online courses and just the opportunities like kind of just like opened themselves up in a way, and we just were like taking them on, and it felt natural. Like we were just like, we've always wanted to share, we've always wanted to be transparent, and always wanted to, you know, like let people in on like our business. Like we're not afraid to talk, because why should we? Because if we can share these things, then like all of us can go up. All of us can get better, and you know, our industry by default will as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes creatives think that if they share things that other people
it's a very old school,
will steal from them, or like the competitive side of it where other people will become better, so then I'm gonna lose out on jobs, or I'm gonna, whatever, I don't know, not succeed. Instead of like, if we all get better, then our industry becomes more respected, which is good for all of us.
Yes, 100%.
And especially if we are talking about pricing or things like that, if all of us are pricing better, we're all going to get higher paying jobs because people are going to have no choice.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And so
I'm happy with that. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I guess, I don't know, like however old we are to each other, but my generation, our generation, whatever is like, a lot better with that. Like there's not as much like gatekeeping and kind of like weird, energy towards like, cause someone getting a high paying job doesn't reduce your paying job, you know, like it doesn't, like it's probably such a rare occurrence where like someone's going to learn something from you and somehow like steal your best client or something.
Yes.
Like, I don't see how that would even happen, especially if you're the one teaching them. It's like you're already established probably or something like that.
Yeah, you're already ahead. So it's definitely like an old school of
archaic
thought.
Yeah.
But it's still definitely prevalent, you know? And so, I agree with you. Like, I think a lot of the younger people who are picking up creative jobs or like starting to freelance, that is growing. Like more and more people are freelancing, and a lot of it is younger people. And I think we want more community, and we are more open to like sharing and talking, which I think is really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed it too. Like it's almost like kind of with anything where I've seen it to like the extreme, like you almost had to go so far to one side to reverse some of the old effects. Cause I've seen some stuff like where I don't completely agree with it. Like it's almost on the other side of the end, like like you're supposed to tell everyone everything. Like you can't have anything to yourself, like share all your like, you know, assets or your whatever. And it's like, I don't know, like that might get a little bit like, people won't want that because it could start to get into the whole like maybe like plagiarism or like copying and things like that. Yeah. But then also you don't want the other side either, where everyone's like shut off and like not helping each other. So I think it's like politics kind of, where you need to go all the way to the end to like bring it back to like a kind of reasonable area.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think also that like we should just be running around expecting other people to give us information without compensating them for it. And not that like we answer a lot of questions for free, and we're very open as much as we can be. But at the end of the day, like that's why we have paid coaching calls, and that's why we have our Patreon, things like that, where it's like, like we've worked really hard to like learn this, and I'm happy to share it. But like we also have to run our business, and we can't spend all of our time answering all these things for free and still have a business that's thriving. And so a lot of times like people ask us a question and we're like, hey, like here's a short answer, but if you want to go more in depth, we have a coaching call. That's the best way to talk about this with us. And if they really value that information, they'll book it.
Yeah. Or you can join a community.
And same with us. Like I wouldn't go to someone and like, unless we're on a friend level, and expect that they're just going to like give us all this information for free. Like I'm going to buy their course or I'm going to like help support them in some way. And I also think another thing that we need to be careful of is like when we learn something from someone, giving them that credit when we're then passing it on to other people. Yeah. So like crediting people even in like information is just as important as like crediting in anything else that you share that belongs to somebody else. So just like things that we have to, like you said, like we kind of are now like learning these things because we've gone to this like other extreme, you know? And so then what's the middle ground, and how can we find a place where we're sharing information that's like healthy, encouraging and healthy, but also like respectful to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you're sharing all this knowledge with someone, and especially if they're getting it for free, like monetarily, the least you could do, I would think, is be like, yo, like, you know, Weekend Creative or whatever, like they told me about this like idea. So
which people do
if
a
you
lot,
liked it, like go tell them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I find that hard. Like I recently did a, I guess, I don't even know what you want to call it, like consultation or whatever, or like helping someone like with design, but not actually designing. So I guess like a coaching thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And I felt like so much like imposter syndrome around that, because like they paid me for it because they said they wanted to. I was like, I don't know if I do that thing, I don't know how to like charge it or whatever.
That's awesome.
And then I figured out a rate, and they said, oh, I'll give you this. And I was like, okay, cool. And then we did it. And the whole time I was like, I hope they're not like, damn, I just paid this guy to talk to him for an hour. And it's like not worth it. And then after they were like, you said so many like small little things I never even would have thought of that like helped so much. And I was like, oh, okay, like maybe it's not like this isn't ridiculous or whatever.
Sometimes like that's something that we like also felt too often, like in our coaching calls too, is like we would like see their work, you know, before the call, and we'd be like, these people don't even need us.
Yeah, like why do they want to talk to us?
But
like
it's
they're
like,
better than us.
But sometimes it's like almost like perspective, right? Like they want to like sometimes feel validated, even like know that they're like whatever that they're on the right track or that they're headed in the right direction. And like, you know, there's a lot of things that we still say in our calls that are very much like, look, we're still learning this, and like you know, we're gonna offer you the best what we've learned, but you know, also like that's something that's part of like running a business and going freelance, is that like there are going to be things that won't work for everybody, right? And so that's kind of where like, all right, we can offer you advice, but you take it with a grain of salt, and like you know, it's trial and error. So yeah, it
kind of goes back to you saying you have different skill sets, whether it be like Photoshop or business and things, because I find that there's tons of designers that I'm friends with that are a lot more naturally talented than me, either whether it be at like, you know, illustration or video editing or whatever. But sometimes I feel like, why are they asking me about this? But then it'll be about something that I know that maybe they're not too familiar with, like, you know, handling with clients or like freelance stuff or something in Photoshop if they mainly work in Illustrator or whatever. And you forget that everyone doesn't know everything. And everyone you talk to knows something that you don't really.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's I think it's good. And I think I just need to figure out a better way to, I don't know, like I want to find a balance of helping people, but like you said, like you're running your own business. I can't just be like answering questions in the DMs all day that I answered, like, especially when I write it in the caption and they ask about it. I'm like, come on.
It takes a lot of time. I know, honestly, probably 90% of the questions that people ask us could be found so easily if they just like clicked the link in our bio
and gone to our website,
went to our website. Blog. They did like a little search on our, like most of the time it's like, what camera do you use? Well, if you just search camera on our website, you'll find it in like 2 seconds. So stuff like that where it's like, you know, you answer and like, it's fine. Like I get it. And like people don't want to read things and like, that's okay. But some of that stuff you're just like, okay, like at some point we can't do that all day, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes when you, I think, when you go up to like someone who's already educating, it's like it'd be smart for you to probably do a little perusing on their website or on their blog or Instagram before, and if you still don't see something, then you can ask.
But most of the time it's very easy to find that information. We make it very clear. We're launching a new website and it's going to be like even more clear. All of our stuff. But
that's like, it's so big in the like design community. I've noticed where a lot of designers have in their description and like a lot of their captions and other places, like don't DM me, like email me for a project. And everyone just DMs them, like, and then they'll tell them to email them and they still don't. And I feel like people don't understand that, like, it's so much easier to keep track of. And like, that's like the professional 100%. Like zone, whereas like DMs are crowded with like, you know, my friends sending me like memes and like all kinds of other shit that it'll get a lot more lost, and it's just better all around. And
Instagram shuts down sometimes
for 4 hours,
you know, and then like you're not going to be able to have access to any of that.
And we're not on Twitter. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah,
honestly.
It's funny. Everyone complains about Instagram, and every time it goes down, I look on like other social
like
sites
so
and they're like all sad.
Like I love Instagram and I also really hate it right now. Like it's the whole metaverse and I'm just like, what is going on?
It's like a toxic relationship for sure.
It is, where it's like, I love it and we've made a lot of friends through it and it's a great source of inspiration. We get a lot of clients there. But it's also so exhausting.
Yeah.
Not only like the content that's on there, but also like just trying to like
run it,
stay on top of it, and like always feeling like you're not doing enough. And then like all the new things, like you're supposed to do 5 reels a week or whatever, and it's like who can possibly do that? Like no one except
unless you're a brand that has teams and
you have
whatever.
a whole team. Yeah. So yeah, it's very exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're always like, 3 steps behind, like right when you figure out like, I'm supposed to, do this like on my stories or whatever. Then like they'll put out a video like, don't do that ever again.
Yeah. And then they're taking away the swipe up and then they're, adding this and now everyone has whatever. And so it's just.
I think that's the thing that people severely underestimate about like becoming a freelancer is just the amount of things that you do outside of just creating work. Like it's one day you could be trying to do social media and engage and like, share your work. And then the next is like, I don't know, you're taking calls and like whatever. Then you're paying your bills or like, dealing with money.
Right.
Like it's just like so varied.
Yeah.
You're like the art director, the accountant, and the project manager, and the social media marketing person or whatever. And sometimes I get frustrated because like I feel like I do more of that than the like designing, and I'm like, that's not what I want to do. I want it to be weighted on the other end, obviously. Yeah. But then also I have a issue like relinquishing. I guess like I'm like. I guess not power, like a responsibility. Like I would be very hard to like have someone do my, like emails or something or like an assistant. Like I don't think I could handle, I would just spend my time seeing what they're doing rather than, it wouldn't even help, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have anyone else with your like stuff?
We've had different contractors at different times.
Yeah.
So right now we have someone who's running ads for us because we we just are not good at like analytics and that kind of stuff.
Like Facebook
I tried
ads
to
and
learn.
stuff?
I tried.
Yeah. We're testing out some Google ads too. Mm-hmm. And then we have an accountant because we don't want to try to estimate our own taxes.
Yeah.
And then we have a
copywriter.
Mm-hmm. So that, and then sometimes, and then Sasha does our podcast editing. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we'll outsource like retouching if we need to.
Love to do more of that.
It might become more of a regular thing.
Yeah, like production work is a lot easier.
It's like finding the right person or like, I don't know, it's kind of like a bit of a gamble sometimes. You have to kind of find who meshes well with you and that kind of thing.
I think
it takes a while to like train them or not train, like I guess like get, I would think at least like a few projects before it's like you could fully be like do your thing on it.
Yeah.
I think we're open to like a part-time employee at some point.
Yeah, I think
maybe
so too.
next year, but have to figure out the tax implications and like the logistics and payment and all that.
Or even like an intern or some shit. I'm sure there's a bunch of like, depending on the task, but I'm sure there's a bunch of like entry level people that would want to be a part of that.
I think like my experience with interns, I mean, maybe it would be totally fine, but I had interns at my last jobs a couple summers, and you end up like, you want it to be a good experience and you want them to learn. So you end up like not doing any
of your own work
because you're like teaching them things, and it's like it ends up being way more work. Whereas like if you hire an employee, then it's like they have more ownership, and also you teach them and then like they stick around longer, so it's more worth it.
Yeah.
But I mean, an intern could be a great option. We just have to like figure out what that would look like. So
that's true, because you're supposed to be actually like teaching them, I guess, too, not just making them edit images all day. Which is like kind of
hard.
Yeah.
And I was an intern, so like I mean,
same.
Because I've been both, where I feel like I'm just like doing like the shit that no one wanted to do, and then other internships where I'm actually like learning under an art director.
And that's what I'd want it to be, but like what we need is just like help with like things that are not that fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What
one of the last things that I wanted to talk to, or two things, but first is I wanted you to tell me a little bit about the Sunday studio thing, or like, is that what it's called?
A
Little Sunday Studio.
Yeah.
And like what made you want to start that? Because it seems like a cool idea, and like from what I've seen on Instagram, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Little Sunday Studio is our space. We actually used to have a different space than the one that we have today.
Yeah.
It was a lot smaller, and it was in this cute little town called Campbell, very close to San Jose. But we really, we were just shooting out of Ellie's kitchen, backyard, garage. Like we were just finding that we were building up all of our props, all of our equipment, like everything was just getting too much. And one of our friends named Diane Villitson reached out to us actually and was kind of like, hey, like I've been thinking about getting a space and maybe like going in on it with other creatives. And we're like, wait, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, because she also does photography and so like, you know, like a fun like little kind of co-working shared space situation. And we're like, that's amazing. And so, you know, we started looking at places and I mean, really, we were in no position to really even like think about a space
we were making no
all.
money.
We were making no money. And eventually, you know, she kind of had to make a decision over like buying a house in San Jose in the Bay Area and, you know, a space. And so she chose her home, which is amazing.
Good for
which
her.
is good for her.
Yeah, good choice.
And we had come across a location and we were just like, well, I mean, I feel like we should still go for it.
Yeah.
And literally had never made a rent. Like
we
the
never
amount.
made enough in a month where like we could have paid rent. But we signed the lease anyway.
We signed the lease anyway.
We still thought, oh, we're going to find other people to go. We're going to kind of sublease this out to other photographers. Like, well, it'll still be like a co-working space, basically. Like, other people will basically help us pay rent. But we never ended up doing that because once we were in there ourselves, we were like,
this is ours.
We don't want anyone else here.
We don't want anyone else. Well, then at that point, we were like, well, we don't want to make decisions like
what if they want like an ugly couch or something? Like, we can't have that.
We can't. No,
so,
it needs to look cute.
And around that time, I quit my job.
Which that's what we were
like
thinking
a couple
about.
months after I quit my job. So I was like, now I have no income and we are barely paying rent in our studio. But I think that really did help us to be able to get our business to a place where we could pay rent.
Yes. I think it really lit a fire under
you had
our
to.
butts.
Suddenly it was like, we have no option. We have to get clients. We have to make money because if we don't, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And
big
so
trouble.
it was like, it made us work a lot harder. Whereas before we didn't have really expenses. We were like kind of being like lackadaisical. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
About it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it
I
was
have
just.
no idea. But.
Good job. Amazing.
Yes.
Like-
as I was
like-
saying it, I was like, I shouldn't be saying this word because I don't really know what I'm saying.
No. But it's like, you know how like people say it very lax? I mean, I know
Yeah.
it means like short for relax, but like lackadaisical is kind of
Right?
like, yeah,
Okay.
it makes sense.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we were just, you know, kind of going along. And then suddenly it was like, okay, we have to.
We
make money.
have to pay.
And then our space that we're in now. So
So we got that space, right? And we were like loving, like having this space to create our work. And again, everything stemming back from like education and wanting to share. And so we were like, oh, how amazing would it be if we like share this with our community? Like there's not enough like product, you know, focused studios or spaces like in our area. There's only a few. And so we're like, well, why not? Like, you know, like let's put it out there. And that's when we got on like Peerspace and stuff. But like that one really didn't like go so far because then we started realizing like actually our area is like the majority is like portrait photographers.
Yeah.
And
they need higher ceilings and better light.
Yeah, it was like such a tiny space. And I mean, it was perfect for us as our first space. But, you know, we definitely outgrew it a lot. And then that's when,
we were there 2 years.
Yeah.
And then when our lease ended, we got the heck out of there.
Bye.
Yeah, we had a lot of issues with our landlord.
Oh my gosh, so many.
So,
we don't even want to go into it.
Yeah, but we ended up.
Maybe we'll tell it on Per Last Email one day.
We ended up here, and the space is like a million times better as far as like it has high ceilings, it has beautiful light, it has a really cool look, and it's like $100 more a month than our last space, and it's like 3 times the size. Like it's crazy. We got such a good deal. Found it on Craigslist. Had terrible photos on Craigslist. So
the brick is dope. I really like the brick.
It's really fun. And like Arabella said, most of the photographers in our area are portrait photographers. So it really works for that. So most of the people who rent it are portrait photographers or like video productions. We've had music videos or video interviews, like that kind of stuff a lot. And a couple product photographers, but mostly it's portrait and video.
Yeah.
And It's really great. I mean, we pretty much almost every month make our rent in like what we're like, how much we're renting it out.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which is awesome. And yeah, so that kind of covers that. And then, you know, it's like we're not using that space every day. We really only shoot for our clients like 4 times a month max.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of days that we're still usually here. Like we'll work in the office or whatever, but it can be used by other people. And eventually we'll do meetups and stuff again too.
Yeah, that's what we used to do because that was kind of a big part of like building community and like
creative networking meetups once a month. So
yeah, I miss that.
Yeah.
That's cool though that it's like free or whatever technically because like you pay for it with the sublease or renting it, the space and stuff like that. The last thing I wanted to ask you guys, and then we'll do the Q&A thing on Patreon right after. But the last thing I want to ask you is, you always talk about all these like stories and things on your podcast and like bad things that have happened to other people. And I'm curious if you can, I'm sure you've told a bunch on your podcast, but give me one of your biggest freelancing. I guess I'll swing it. I'll give you the choice. It could be a super success story or a horror story, however you want to.
Let's do a horror story.
Yeah.
Leave it.
I feel like most of them are so long.
I know.
Is there like a shorter one?
Well, I mean, maybe we can talk about like one of the most recent ones and like things that went bad in it. Like, like I'm thinking of pasta.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pasta.
That's the code name for that client.
Yeah.
Pasta la vista, baby.
We had a client over the summer and
oh man.
Honestly, from the beginning, I should have known that they were going to be difficult.
It's always like that.
Yeah. Yep. But you just like, you're like, maybe it'll be fine. And there's been a couple of times where I've thought that and then it turned out to be great.
Yeah.
So you kind of always think that, like, maybe it'll be fine. But yeah, he was kind of difficult from the begining. And there was like 3 guys in the company who were involved. But like really I was only talking to one, and I don't think he was really like communicating with the other ones. Come to find out, like the other guys are the sons of the founder too. So like I don't think they really actually have any they're kind of just like working for their dad, and they don't really know what they're talking about. Like I think they know maybe like the product, but they don't really understand like why certain choices would be made on our end.
Right.
You know, but they act like they do. So yeah, they told me that they wanted something like really different than what they had, and we like talked through a bunch of things and
all these things were solidified like as you know, creating the plan and
not only did I do mock-ups, I literally sent them pictures of the sets. Like, here is the exact wood that I'm using, here's the fabric, like literal pictures of things. So in addition to like the mock-ups that I usually do, it was like even more.
Yeah. So everything was approved beforehand. And day of the shoots. What? Day of the shoot.
The main guy that I was talking to was not here.
Yes.
It was the other 2 guys.
And they were late. They came late.
Were late.
So that already deterred, like, you know, an already, you know. Anyway. So they were late.
There while you shoot. Is that normal?
It depends.
Yeah, I mean,
it depends.
It's normal if they do show up.
If they're spending that much money, a lot of times they will come. Yeah. Like they flew from Florida for this shoot.
Okay.
But it depends.
Florida, yeah, that doesn't help the situation.
Should have led with that.
I know, right?
No, it depends. Sometimes they join us remotely. Sometimes they're not there at all. But a lot of times it's good if they're there actually.
Yeah, because they can provide
things.
Context or like, you know, just make certain decisions a little bit easier to make if they're there to like be like, that flows or that makes sense for whatever. But so anyway, so then they were there and we're setting up the first shot, and the guy goes, I don't really like this background. Do you have anything else?
I'm like,
no.
You mean you don't like this one that I sent you a picture of and you said was fine?
That you approved?
That you approved? So I specifically made it for this shoot.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time.
Yeah.
And no, I don't have anything else because I don't like plan a backup set. Like if you approve the set, like that's the set. And so we're like going through all of our backgrounds, like trying to find one. I've also hired a food stylist to help us with this shoot. Yeah. And that like, so it's like her time and all this stuff. They also like added images. They're like, oh, sorry, we didn't tell you about this other image that we need. Like we have to add this and stuff. And so like, which is okay, whatever. But like all of this stuff is taking more time and they showed up late. So we're already behind.
Yeah.
Right.
So we go overtime.
There's like a moment too where, you know, he was getting frustrated and he had to like walk away.
He's like so mad at like how the shoot is going, so he like storms off into the corner and is like on the phone and all this stuff. And we're just like, oh my God. And like everything
and there's
that
certain things that just like they weren't making decisions on.
They weren't making decisions. Every single, and I felt bad for like the other brother because I think he liked things and he was like really nice, and I think he felt bad for like how his brother was treating us, and everything that we did, like it was wrong. Like every setup was like like he would just like come and stand and look at it. He'd be like, like
that's so annoying.
I just like it's not really what we were going for. And that's the
thing, like when we'd ask, then be like, okay, like what do you not like? What do you not? Like, what
do you
like?
What can we change? He'd be like,
I'll know it when I see it. That's what they say.
Basically.
Yeah, he's just like, it's just not. We're not there. We're not there yet. And we're like,
there's just something. It's
okay,
just something.
but like,
I don't know. I don't know.
It looks great to us. So like, I don't know what to change.
And again, we showed it to you beforehand.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's like when I send a client like a almost done thing and they're like, it's a good start. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, literally. Oh, sorry.
All good.
Just creating messes over here. I'm too excited. We get animated over here.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so then anyway, so yeah, we go over time. Oh my God, that was a crazy day. And then, so I'm editing photos, whatever. And, you know, I sent them off and they basically said that the fabric that we used in some of the shots was not luxe enough, that it didn't look luxe enough. And then they also had something to say about the colors. It was too saturated.
Yeah.
So then, and then they asked me if we could saturate the fabric more, but desaturate the rest of the, like, it was just like these
like every
obnoxious like requests.
They were like the contradictory requests where
Yes.
it's like, you can't do both of those.
Yeah. It was just weird. Like it just, nothing made sense. And at the end of it all, they ended up just being like, can we just get the...
She like re-edited stuff multiple times.
Yes, I did revisions.
They were like, okay, can we just like edit them ourselves? And we usually don't let clients do that, but we were so annoyed. We were finally like, yes, like it's whatever. But then they were like trying to not pay the final invoice, because they like didn't want to. They were like, well, we're having to pay for our own retoucher now, so like we shouldn't have to pay for this. And like the food stylist was much more expensive, and you told us it would be this much. And I was like, well, I didn't know we were gonna have overtime, first of all. Second of all, like you agreed to pay that. Like in our contract, it says you have to pay our invoice regardless of if you use the images, like or like them. Like it doesn't matter. Like you have to.
Yeah,
we made what you said you wanted us to make, and like you approved it, so like you have to pay it. And they had already had, with the deposit, they had already had a late fee that I waived for them because they were like, oh, COVID, sorry, we couldn't pay on time. And I'm like, okay, that's BS these days. Like we've been in COVID for what, like almost 2 years. Like I think you can pay an invoice on time. But like I let it slide. I was like, this one time. So then like, I think they ended up with like 3 late fees on our other invoice, and I made them pay it all. I was like, because they like waited. I sent the invoice. They had a month to pay it. They waited until like the last day they had to pay it before they came back and said, oh, actually we don't like the images, so like we need revisions on them, so we're not going to pay the invoice. And I'm like, you had a month. You had a month to have this conversation.
The entire time they just weren't happy, and it's like, why did you come to us then?
Yeah, like we were trying to, because like they kept pointing out our other work and being like, we love this, we love this. So I was trying to do that kind of work for them, but that's not what they actually wanted. And they're like, the images are too different from what we have. They don't work with everything on our site. And I was like, you specifically told me you wanted something different than what you have. So like you can't have both. You can't have
or
the
you just
same
need to have
and different.
better communication because clearly something
you can't have both.
Yeah.
And so it was like this whole process. It was like pulling teeth to get them to pay. And then we actually recently just looked because they were supposed to also send us the images to approve once they edited them themselves, which they never did. But we looked on their site and they look so bad. Like the way they did the saturation, like the hand of the model looks like it's a
looks
dead
like a
person.
corpse.
Like it's gray and so desaturated that it's like disgusting.
Yeah.
Like
it's green.
So bad. Yes, it's so bad.
It's so bad.
And we're like, okay, they just have bad taste.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like I don't know what to say.
What can we do? You know, we've put all these things in place for us to not deal with this kind of shit, and it still happens. So things,
Yeah. Well, so now we changed our contract so before it was like we would deliver the final images. So like they had 30 days to pay their final invoice, and usually like the images would get delivered about halfway through that. And then it was in our contract that the licensing wasn't transferred or like active until they paid the final invoice. So like legally they couldn't use the images until they paid.
Right.
But that wasn't enough because they were kind of like, well, we don't like them. We're not going to use them anyway. And so now we have changed it where they have to pay before the final images are released. And
yeah, that's better.
Yeah, it kind of sucks in some senses, and it sucks for the clients who are like great, but you know, one person, one pasta
like
man will ruin it all.
Yeah. When someone does something bad, they're like, all right, now you get to go to lunch or whatever it is.
You just ruined it for all our other clients.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that was like, I guess that story is why you guys are able to make the podcast almost every week or every week and stuff.
That's true.
If you guys want to hear more of that, more freelancing stories, probably some longer ones, some shorter ones, and all kinds of stuff like that, you could check out per our last email. And then we're going to do a little bonus Q&A on the Patreon. But other than that, I appreciate you guys coming on. It was really fun.
Thank you for having us. It was really fun.